Today I'm going to be talking about why science can be irrelevant in your life. Hey everyone, my name is Jack, and today I want to talk about the limitations of science in improving your life. Now, before all of you jump on me, I first want to explain my qualifications. I was a mechanical engineer. I studied it for 4 years in university, and I've been very much into science from a very young age. I took AP Physics in high school, and I scored a 5. I took BC Calculus, and in college I took everything up to Calculus 3, which is multivariable calculus, differential equations, statistics, physics, chemistry, you name it. As a mechanical engineer, I actually have a very broad knowledge into science, even though I may not have as deep of a knowledge as, say, a biologist or a physicist. There are many issues with science, but there are also many good things about science. I will definitely not say that science is not useful at all. It is extremely useful. The problem that I'm trying to talk about right now is that people try to apply science to everything. In this video, I really want to talk about the limitations of science and what is the alternative to science when you're trying to live a more peaceful, more fulfilled, more happy life. First of all, the thing that I hear from a lot of people who are scientifically minded is that statistics is the key to everything, that scientific data and statistics is really the essence of finding things that can help you. This can be somewhat true, but there are real big limitations that I see with this. Now, let me give you an example. I used to work at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and remember, I was talking to 2 women once who were working there, 2 grad students, and I was telling them about my ideas about how art can help you, and how I didn't really like psychology because it was too general. And they challenged me and they laughed at me because they said, if you don't have techniques and tactics that are scientifically proven, then that means that you have nothing backing up your claims. Although I think that it would be good to put my ideas under a scientific test, I don't think I need science in order to tell everyone about my ideas. At the end of the day, science doesn't actually matter. Let me say that again. At the end of the day, science doesn't actually determine whether or not something is helpful to you. Let me give you an example. Let's say there's a study out there that says that 90% of people who take a specific pill will recover from cancer. And say you have cancer. Say you decide to take the pill. And it doesn't work for you. Does it really matter that 90% of people took the pill, recovered from cancer? It doesn't matter to you because you didn't recover from cancer. Let's say that there was another pill that only 10% of people recovered from cancer and 90% of people didn't recover from cancer. It's worse than random chance. Maybe the 10% is only placebo. But let's say you take the pill and you recover from cancer. Does it really matter to you whether there is data backing that pill up? No, it doesn't, because at the end of the day, it worked for you. Now, are those scientific studies important? Yes, of course, because if 90% of people recovered from cancer, that means it's a drug that is extremely useful and can be used for a lot of people. But ultimately, it doesn't matter to you whether those other people recover from cancer. It doesn't, because at the end of the day, it has to work for you. And that was the point I was making. You don't need to have tactics and techniques that are proven by science in order for them to work for you. It doesn't matter whether experiments have shown them to be effective if they worked for you. Where do we take this? What can we learn from the fact that science doesn't carry ultimate weight? What actually does carry ultimate weight? Well, to me, it's very clear. Knowing yourself. That knowing when something helps you or not is more important than a scientific study. The reason why scientific studies are problematic is because statistics and scientific studies only give you an idea of the majority or a general rule of thumb. It doesn't actually help you figure out what is good for you. For example, in statistics, if you look at something with a general correlation, usually isn't very strong. It's usually something like 65% of people showed a more positive response to this drug. And so maybe it's more than placebo, and there's just a slight correlation. Well, here's the thing. You don't know many factors. First of all, you don't know why for 35% of people it didn't work, and you don't know how much it worked for 65% of people. You don't know if it worked more for some people and less for other people, and you don't know why it works more for some people and less for some people. And this comes into the huge limitation of science. Science can be an incredible tool. I believe that it can be used to prove everything, but it really depends on who's asking the questions. It depends on what hypothesis is set up and how much the researcher actually understands on how something works or not. Example of this can be Eastern philosophy, Eastern medicine. There's been a lot of studies out there who have tried to prove or disprove this. And as a really strong believer in Eastern medicine, I believe that a lot of these studies have failed or not shown very strong results because the people who are conducting experiments don't actually understand what Eastern medicine can actually be used to do and in picking practitioners. So say that you had an acupuncture study and 50% or less of people felt no difference in the acupuncture. Well, here's a question I have for the researcher. Do you actually know how to select a good acupuncturist? If you selected a bunch of 50% of the acupuncturists were bad and 50% of the acupuncturists were good, then obviously the results are going to come out to reflect that. It's going to be random chance. Before you believe a study, you have to look at the methodology behind it. It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't come up with a study that could definitively prove acupuncture. It just means that they have to understand it very well or disprove acupuncture. It doesn't mean that someone can't disprove acupuncture, but they really have to understand the principles behind it and the principles behind what makes it work. This brings me back to my point. It doesn't matter so much on whether science can prove or disprove something. It matters more to whether something works for you, because you can decide whether acupuncture works for you, whether Eastern medicine works for you, whether this drug works for you. You can decide whether this works for you by paying attention to yourself. Now say that you're afraid of placebo. You're afraid that you'll take the drug or do acupuncture or do any one of these art exercises that maybe you get from me, and you think, oh, maybe this works, but only works because you think that it will work. First of all, does that even matter? If it worked for you, does that even matter at the end of the day? Let's say you recover from cancer from purely placebo. I don't think that's possible, but let's say you did. Does it matter? You recovered from cancer. In a sense, maybe the treatment didn't have the desired effect, the effect that the practitioner or the person delivering the treatment actually intended. But if it actually cured the problem in the end, it doesn't matter, right? It was a solution to the problem. The second thing is, if you are worried about really getting in your own head and you take a drug or you try a new technique and you're like, I'm not sure whether this will work, instead of looking at the science and being like, is there scientific evidence proving whether this works or not, focus more on yourself. If you're afraid of placebo, write down every day after you do this technique what happens and compare it to what happens normally. Really notice it. Really focus in on yourself. And I believe that everyone, if they focus in on themselves, they would be able to know whether something works for them or not. At the end of the day, science doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what is helpful for you. Let me rephrase that. Science is incredibly important. It brings up a lot of knowledge and can bring in a lot of ideas and inspiration. It can help big organizations deal with general rules of thumb. It can help you deal with general rules of thumb. But at the end of the day, what you care about is whether something works for you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what science says. All right, guys, that's it for today. Stay connected to yourself.
Periodic table. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon, potassium, calcium, scandium, titanium, I'm so close.